The Kamala Harris campaign message of joy appeared to resonate with many Americans over the summer who were relieved when the aging Joe Biden got out of the race. But now anti-Trump strategists in both parties are urging the Harris campaign to take the gloves off down the stretch, get rough, and hit Donald Trump hard over the threat he poses to democracy. Former Republican Party Chair Michael Steele says now is not the time for the Harris campaign to worry about the blowback from negative attacks.
I get exactly the point about the negative messaging and how that works. But the clarity should be, we've seen this movie. We know how it ended on January 6th. So when he's sitting here telling you that the problem is from within, folks, it's not you and me, it's him. The problem is in the House, and it's not you, it's him. And so you have an opportunity on Election Day to rid the House of the problem. Do not keep it there. Do not allow it back in. Project 2025 is real.
Generally, voters turn out on Election Day because they are inspired to vote for something or somebody. Most voters don't go to the trouble of showing up if they are only against something. In that case, they stay home. Now, there is a benefit in turning off undecided voters and suppressing their turnout if there's a chance they may vote for your opponent. The Trump campaign has repeatedly trashed Kamala Harris and painted a picture of America being overrun by criminals if Harris wins. That strategy could stop some low-information voters who are thinking of supporting Harris. The problem, according to a growing number of strategists, is that the Harris campaign has not been hammering the existential threat that Donald Trump poses to America. It's fine, say the strategists, to promote a Harris economy that works for everybody and campaign on improving opportunity and fairness and reproductive rights, but the dagger to Trump needs to be sharper, they say. The strategy recently got some help from General Mark Milley, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Here's the report on MSNBC.
General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, called Trump, quote, a fascist to the core. That's according to excerpts from War, a new book from longtime Washington journalist Bob Woodward. Milley went on to tell Woodward that Trump is the most dangerous person ever. I had suspicions when I talked to you about his mental decline and so forth, but now I realize he's a total fascist. He is now the most dangerous person to this country. Milley also said he fears he could be court-martialed if Trump wins the election.
Former U.S. National Guard Major General Randy Manor pointed to Trump's recent promise to use the military to handle the radical left and handle others who speak out against Trump.
Do we want a commander-in-chief who says that he will potentially use the National Guard and active duty military to hunt down those people who do not agree with him? Not only is it illegal, it's immoral. Now, remember, the Supreme Court has already said that the president can do whatever he or she wants without any kind of consequences. That means that will be a green light for him to use the National Guard, which is extremely easy, by the way, from a legal point of view. He could use it to hunt down people who don't agree with him. Is that what we want in our country? Well, I don't. And I think most Americans do not.
And that brings things back to the Democratic campaign strategy. Earlier this year, President Biden's arguments that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy largely fell flat. So when Biden dropped out and Harris became the Democratic nominee, her campaign focused on the economy and boosting women's reproductive rights in terms of what Harris stood for. And regarding what the Harris campaign is against, it was the weirdness of Trump and his weird policies. But as the election has drawn closer, Trump's rhetoric has become more and more unhinged and tyrannical. It is frightening when you consider how Trump might follow through in office, and calling out the Trump team's fascist ambitions is a political and moral obligation, according to Democratic strategist James Carville.
If they win, they're going to correctly say, we told you in the election what we were going to do, and you voted for us. You have green-lighted the whole thing. And if we don't tell people about that, if these young black men, how do you think they're going to do? If you're a young black male and Trump inspired army roundup of people, how well do you think you're going to do in that? Do you think you got nothing to lose? How about looking at American history for one time and see what can happen here? And they are telling you, we're not making this up. This is not, we can be fact checked by anybody. They have promised military roundup. They've promised the gates of hell will rain on the enemies. The Supreme Court has green lighted it. They were asked the question, if a Navy SEAL is ordered to assassinate a political enemy, the president can't be, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of his job. They are telling you they're doing all of this. Pay attention to them right now, please. They're telling you.
Of course, getting the country to pay attention to Trump's pledges is on the shoulders of the Harris campaign. The news media can only do so much. The Harris campaign, down the stretch, has a bigger megaphone and the ability to drive what the media and the nation thinks about in these final few weeks. And Donald Trump has served this up on a silver platter. Trump is not only talking openly about using the military to round up his political enemies and critics, Trump has scheduled a rally at Madison Square Garden at the end of October. Why have a rally in New York, a Democratic state? Well, maybe it's a Trump effort to get a lot of media attention, or maybe it's a reach back to history, ugly history. You see, in February of 1939, 20,000 Nazi supporters in America held a rally at Madison Square Garden. They held up a giant picture of George Washington with swastikas on each side and claimed that Washington, if he were alive, would be friends with Adolf Hitler. Donald Trump has repeatedly used rhetoric that mimics Hitler. And using the military to round up enemies, as Trump has now pledged, harkens back to Nazi Germany. If Donald Trump is not channeling fascism and Nazi Germany, then Trump should make that clear. And his campaign should say Trump misspoke when he referred to using the military to round up people who stand in Trump's way. But at the moment, the Trump campaign is doubling down on the unhinged lunatic smears of Democrats. And while calling out Trump as unfit for office may turn up the temperature and come across as too negative, the Harris campaign may have no choice. Donald Trump seems acceptable to 47 or 48% of the electorate, and Harris needs to knock down that number for the sake of her election chances and for the benefit of our nation as a guard against tyranny. By the way, there is a strong argument that the polls showing a close race are wrong and that Harris is going to win decisively.
We've got this story from the Wall Street Journal. Kamala Harris struggling to break through with working class Democrat sphere. Indeed, my friends, in the crucial states that Harris needs to win, they're actually looking at internal polling suggesting she is down, heavily favoring Donald Trump.
Internal polls heavily favor Donald Trump. Well, not exactly. The Wall Street Journal reported, quote, an internal poll done by Democrat Tammy Baldwin's Senate campaign last week showed Harris down by 3 percentage points in Wisconsin, while Baldwin was up by 2 points, according to a person familiar with the poll. The person said much of the narrowing is due to Republican strength with non-college educated men. So why would Tammy Baldwin's campaign leak this to the Wall Street Journal? Well, that's because Baldwin wants Democrats, including the Harris campaign, to spend more money and pay more attention to Wisconsin. Check out that video at the link below. I'm Shuster. Thanks for joining us.